Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that literally has a zero margin for error, handling dangerous goods out on the tarmac. Every single year, thousands of undeclared, totally hazardous items just kind of slip into the global aviation cargo chain. And when we're dealing with aviation operations, safety isn't just some priority, it's an absolute mandate. So today, we're zeroing in on the exact sequence of protocols you need to follow the second an unknown hazard is discovered.
But right before we get into those protocols, we really need to define the threat, straight from the operations manual. We're talking about undeclared dangerous goods sneaking into the cargo chain. Basically, these are hazardous articles or substances that nobody bothered to declare or identify. And if they're handled improperly, they pose severe threats, not just to the aircraft, but to personnel and the environment. We absolutely have to treat these with the utmost caution. To get a handle on this, we're going to follow a 5-phase roadmap. 1. Identify and isolate hazards. 2. Assess and notify authorities. 3. Consult experts and plan. 4. Execute safe disposal. And 5. Document, monitor, and review. We're moving sequentially here, from spotting the hazard all the way to the post-incident review. No skipping steps, and it has to be in this exact order. All right, Section 1, Identify and isolate hazards. Let's put ourselves right out on the tarmac, right next to a Bombardier Q400 aircraft. This is going to be our setting for this first critical phase.
Let's start the clock on our scenario with the first two mandatory actions, identification and isolation. Picture a ground handler doing a routine cargo inspection right next to the open cargo bay of our Bombardier Q400. Suddenly, they spot it, a suspicious, unlabeled package. That's step 1. Any misdeclared or undeclared dangerous goods have to be identified immediately during regular checks. To lock this into your memory, think ID, inspect and discover. But you can't just leave it sitting there. That package must be physically moved away from the Q400 and placed into a secure, designated storage area on the tarmac. That's step 2. You isolate the goods instantly to prevent any potential disasters. The memory aid here, ISO, immediately secure outside. What's really great about this is how easily you can lock these acronyms into your brain. ID and ISO, inspect and discover, then immediately secure outside. Memorize those, and your initial response becomes completely automatic and perfectly compliant. Moving on to Section 2, Assess and notify authorities. So, we've successfully isolated the threat away from the aircraft, which brings us to the escalation phase. You really can't just act blindly here, so we immediately jump into assessment and notification. For step 3, imagine our safety personnel standing at a safe distance from that isolated package, reviewing a checklist, with the Bombardier Q400 parked safely out of the way in the background. You have to conduct a thorough assessment to figure out the nature, the quantity, and the exact level of risk. The trick here is ASK, assess, size, and kind. Once that's done, we hit step 4. Picture an airport official by the Q400's landing gear, urgently getting on a two-way radio and a tablet. Why? Because the relevant authorities, like the DGCA, the Flight Safety Department, the airport operator, they all need to be notified right away with detailed info and the exact location of the goods. Remember this with the acronym NOTE, Notify Operators to Evaluate. So, the big takeaway is to ask before you act, and always leave a note for the authorities. Assess, size, and kind, then notify operators to evaluate. These 2 steps just make sure you aren't trying to handle a potentially volatile situation without your entire safety network backing you up. And looking at this breakdown, it brilliantly illustrates the strict chain of communication you need the second an undeclared hazard is verified. You aren't just making one phone call, you're activating an entire web of oversight. The DGCA handles national regulatory oversight, your Flight Safety Department takes care of the internal airline operations, and the airport operator ensures the actual ground and tarmac safety. It's absolutely crucial how these 3 layers work together so there's no single point of failure in the response. Okay, Section 3, Consult experts and plan. With the authorities on alert, we shift from just containing the hazard to actually building a tactical disposal strategy. At this stage, guessing is literally not an option. We rely entirely on specialized protocols. For step 5, our ramp supervisor stays by the Bombardier Q400, but immediately gets on the phone with a specialized off-site dangerous goods expert. You have to seek advice from specialized personnel to figure out the absolute safest course of action. Your memory aid for this one is expert. Extract exact protocols via expert review team. Once the expert weighs in, we move right to step 6.
Imagine a digital blueprint overlaid on our Q400, mapping out safe transport routes away from the plane, prioritizing the environment. You must follow a disposal plan based strictly on those expert recommendations and regulatory laws. The memory aid here? Plan. Prioritize laws and nature. Keep your focus sharp here. Just remember to always call the expert before finalizing your plan. You extract exact protocols, and then you prioritize laws and nature. Doing this guarantees that whatever physical move you make next is 100% backed by safety science and environmental regulations. Which brings us to Section 4, Execute Safe Disposal. We've got our blueprint, so now it's time to physically get that hazard away from the aircraft. This step requires absolute precision. Everyone on the tarmac needs to exercise extreme caution. In Step 7, a specialized hazmat team carefully loads the isolated package into an authorized disposal vehicle, driving it far away from the Bombardier Q400. This is the physical culmination of all that planning. The disposal plan is executed in a highly controlled manner, transferring the goods to authorized facilities or using specialized teams. To remember this, use the acronym EXE. Execute with extreme caution.
The absolute only way to get through this phase without an incident is to EXE with a zero margin for error. Execute with extreme caution. I mean, rushing this step after perfectly planning the whole thing, that could be a disaster. Meticulous execution is everything.
Almost there. Section 5, Document, Monitor, and Review. Let's see how this builds into our final phase, because the job is definitely not over just because the package is gone. These final 3 steps ensure everything was compliant and that we actually learn from what just happened. In Step 8, a ground official stands by the Q400 with a clipboard, meticulously filling out a detailed incident report, logging every communication and the personnel involved. Detailed records of the whole process must be kept. Use the memory aid, DOC, document occurrence completely. While they're doing the paperwork, Step 9 is already happening. A safety officer watches that disposal vehicle leave the area. The process has to be continuously monitored to ensure compliance and address any real-time issues. Remember MON, monitor operations nonstop. And finally, Step 10. The safety team gathers in a briefing room, projecting the whole incident on screen to analyze it. After it's all done, a thorough review is conducted to identify areas for improvement and put corrective measures in place. Lock that in with REV, Review, Evaluate, Validate. This breakdown is crucial. It shows exactly what your documentation has to include to satisfy any post-incident audits. When you're in the doc phase, you can't be vague. Regulators are going to demand to see the exhaustive timeline, the full personnel lists, the exact communication logs, the expert advice you were given, and the final disposal facility and method used. You really secured the longevity of your operations by committing DOC, MON, and REV to memory. Document completely, monitor nonstop, and review, evaluate, validate. If you execute these final steps flawlessly, you're turning a highly dangerous tarmac incident into a powerful training tool that literally makes your whole airline safer tomorrow. We've safely removed the threat, processed all the paperwork, and kept our Bombardier Q400 protected. From identification all the way through to that final review, you've now got the exact blueprint for handling undeclared dangerous goods. But remember, procedures only work if you stay alert. If you walked past a mislabeled box on the tarmac tomorrow, would you catch it? Keep these acronyms in mind, stay vigilant out there, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.